the bottle shattered against the wall of the walk-in freezer. Shards of glass exploding like brittle memories I try to bury. You're nothing but a pathetic little fairy serving scraps to real men. The man's voice slithered through the kitchen door, laced with the kind of venom that only old money could afford to spit without consequence. I froze, my knuckles white around the edge of a serving tray. The weight of his words hitting harder than the crash of that vintage scotch I'd just poured for him. It was supposed to be just another shift at Le Cirque, the kind of upscale French bistro in Midtown where Wall Street wolves and Park Avenue peacocks came to preen over foie gras and flirt with bankruptcy via $500 bottles of wine. But tonight, as the clock ticked toward closing on that humid August evening in 2025, everything I'd built, my fragile armor, my hidden life, cracked wide open. And it started with them, Harold and Evelyn Hargrove, the power couple whose empire of hedge funds and high-rises loomed over half of Manhattan like a gilded guillotine. I was Matthew Ellis, 28, and by all outward appearances, just another waiter scraping by in the city's underbelly. 6'1", lean from too many double shifts and not enough sleep, with a mop of chestnut hair that always fell into my eyes no matter how many times I pushed it back. My uniform, crisp white shirt, black vest, tie knotted just so, hid the tattoos snaking up my forearms, a compass rose on one, inked after my first real heartbreak, and a line from Whitman on the other. I am large. I contain multitudes. It was my quiet rebellion, a nod to the poet who'd whispered permission to love fiercely in a world that often roared back with hate. But appearances were my specialty. I've been slinging plates at Le Cirque for 2 years now, ever since I fled the suffocating glass tower of my family's legacy up in the Hamptons. Dad, Robert Ellis, the king of commercial real estate, as Forbes loved to crown him, had built an empire on steel and sky, turning empty lots into luxury condos that dotted the skyline from Miami to Seattle. Mom was the socialite shadow, all pearls and philanthropy gallus. They loved me, in their way. Loved the straight-A Harvard grad who'd intern at the firm, the golden boy poised to inherit it all. But when I came out at 24, fresh off a semester abroad in Paris, where I'd finally kissed a boy under the Seine and felt my soul crack open, their love curdled into something conditional. We can fix this, Matt, Dad had said over brandy in the study, his face paling like he'd just lost a deal. Therapy. Discretion. Think of the family name. I thought of Nicholas instead. Nick Hargrove, the sharp-jawed heir to his parents' fortune, with eyes like smoked quartz and a laugh that could disarm a room. We'd met 2 years ago at a dive bar in the East Village, me nursing a cheap beer after a brutal shift, him hiding from some boardroom blow-up. One spilled drink, one shared cigarette on the fire escape, and suddenly I was falling into a love that felt like oxygen after drowning. Nick was everything I wasn't, out and proud since college. The kind of gay man who wore his rainbow cufflinks to galas and donated to every queer nonprofit in the 5 boroughs. But he didn't know who I was. Not the real me, the Ellis heir who'd walked away from a 9-figure trust fund to prove I could stand on my own. I told him I was just Matt, the waiter with student loans and dreams of writing a novel someday. It was our little secret, this version of me. And God, it felt good to be loved for the man I was becoming, not the one I'd been born into. That night, though, as I pushed through the swinging doors with their entrees balanced like a high-wire act, the Hargroves were at table 12, a corner booth draped in velvet shadows. Harold, mid-50s, silver fox with a Rolex that probably cost more than my annual rent, leaned back in his chair, swirling his glass like he owned a vintage. Evelyn, elegant in a sheath dress that screamed Chanel, dabbed at her lipstick with a napkin monogrammed in gold. They were celebrating something, Nick had mentioned offhand that his folks were in town for a merger announcement. I hadn't connected the dots until now. Evening. Folks, I said, setting down the plates with a practiced smile. Coco vin for you, sir, and a rack of lamb for madam. Anything else I can get you? Harold barely glanced up, his eyes flicking over me like I was the garnish. Yeah, kid. Another round of that Macallan. And make it snappy. Some of us have places to be. I nodded, swallowing the familiar sting. It was the job. You got used to the dismissals, the tips that came with a side of superiority. But as I turned to go, Evelyn's voice cut through, light and laced with that old money lilt. Darling, did you see the way he flitted over here? All that swaying. It's like watching a peacock in a penguin suit. Harold chuckled, low and rumbling. New York's full of 'em these days, waltzing around like they own the joint. Back in my day, you'd keep that nonsense behind closed doors. My back stiffened, but I kept walking, heat crawling up my neck. I'd heard worse, slurs scrawled on bathroom stalls, whispers in the alley after shifts, but something about their casual cruelty landed like a gut punch. By the time I reached the bar, my hands were shaking as I poured the scotch. The bartender, Luis, caught my eye. You good, Matt? Those two look like they ate a lemon orchard. Yeah, I muttered, forcing a grin. Just the usual vultures circling, but it wasn't usual. Not when the woman who'd just called me a peacock was Evelyn Hargrove, the mother of a man who'd whispered, I love you against my skin last night in our cramped Brooklyn walk-up. Nick and I had been careful, text deleted, dates in hidden speakeasies, no rings or public hand-holding. He was under pressure from Harold to settle down with some debutante from the right zip code, a sham marriage to keep the investors happy. It's temporary, he'd promised, his fingers tracing my jaw in the dark. Once the merger's locked, I'll come out to them. We'll go to City Hall, make it official. You and me against the world. Babe, I believed him. Or I wanted to. God, how I wanted to. The night dragged on in a haze of orders and forced smiles. The Hargroves nursed their drinks, their laughter spiking whenever I approached, sharp, knowing jabs that made the other servers avert their eyes. Oh, waiter dear, Evelyn trilled once, as I refilled her water. You have such delicate hands. Do you play the piano, or is it something more? Artistic, Harold guffawed, slapping the table. Artistic. Hell. Bet he's got a whole portfolio of those glittery posters in his studio apartment. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper, nodding politely. Enjoy your meal, ma'am. Inside, though, fury coiled like a spring. Who are they to judge? To reduce me to a caricature because my wrist flicked a certain way when I set down a glass. I'd grown up in ballrooms just like this one, dodging debutante cotillions and dad's poker buddies with their backroom deals. I learned to code switch before I could drive, posh accent for galas, street grit for the subway. And now, here I was, serving the very entitlement I'd rejected. Closing time finally rolled around, the last patrons filtering out into the neon hum of the city. I was in the back, untying my apron, when my phone buzzed. Nick's face lit up the screen, a selfie from earlier, us tangled in sheets, his hair sleep-mussed and perfect. Hey, handsome. Parents are wrapping up their dinner. Heading your way after. Miss you already. Red heart. My thumb hovered over the reply. Heart twisting. I typed back. Miss you more. Rough night. See you soon. Little did I know, the rough part was just beginning. As I shrugged on my jacket, the kitchen door banged open, and Luis poked his head in. Matt, your fan club from 12 wants to settle up. And they asked for you specifically. Watch your back. These types tip in attitude. I sighed, rolling my shoulders. On it, grabbing the leather folder with their bill, $1, $200, Easy, I wove through the emptying dining room. The Hargroves were still there. Coats on. Evelyn scrolling her phone while Harold signed a receipt with a flourish. Up close, without the buffer of the table. Their wealth hit like a wave. The subtle gleam of diamonds on her ears. The monogrammed cufflinks peeking from his sleeve. They reeked of the life I'd left behind. Private jets to Aspen. Summers in the vineyard. The kind of security that bred contempt for anyone who poured your wine. Bill, please, Harold said, not looking up. I slid the folder across, and he scrawled something inside before snapping it shut. Keep the change. Son, buy yourself a nice. Whatever it is you people do on the weekends. Evelyn tittered, rising gracefully. Yes, darling. Perhaps a new feather boa, or tickets to that dreadful parade downtown. The word parade landed like a slap. Pride. They meant the one Nick and I had marched in last June. Hands linked under rainbow banners. Sweat slick and euphoric amid the thumping bass and cheering crowds. I'd felt invincible then, shouting chants until my throat burned. Nick's arm around my waist like a shield. Now, it twisted into something ugly in their mouths. I forced my voice steady, years of etiquette classes kicking in. Thank you. Have a good evening. But Harold wasn't done. He leaned in, breath sour with whiskey, his eyes narrowing as if appraising a faulty stock. Listen, kid, I get a tough city, tough breaks. But parading around like that, it's not dignified. Find a nice girl. Settle down. Life's easier when you play by the rules. My pulse thundered in my ears. Dignified. Rules. The same script Dad had fed me. Word for word. The night he suggested that discreet clinic in Connecticut. I wanted to laugh. To hurl the folder back at him and scream that I'd built skyscrapers and boardrooms before I could vote. That I'd turned down a penthouse to sleep on a futon because authenticity was worth more than any trust fund. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not without dragging Nick into the crossfire. Instead, I met his gaze, my voice low and even. With all due respect, sir, the only rules that matter are the ones you write for yourself. Good night, Evelyn gasped, clutching her pearls, actual pearls, the kind that clicked like judgment. Harold's face reddened, but before he could retort, the front door chimed, and there was Nick, striding in like he just stepped off a runway. All tailored slacks and effortless charm. His eyes lit up when he saw me, but faltered as he clocked his parents. Mom? Dad? Where are you? Nick? Darling. Evelyn air-kissed the air near his cheek. We were just leaving. This place is divine. But the service? Well, let's say it's memorable. Harold clapped Nick on the shoulder. Too hard to be affectionate. Son, walk us out. We got that call with Tokyo at dawn. Nick shot me an apologetic glance, quick, loaded with the promise of later explanations. Yeah, sure. Matt, I'll text you. I nodded, throat tight. Drive safe. As they filed out, Evelyn's parting shot floated back like smoke. Such a sweet boy. That waiter. If only he knew his place. The door swung shut, and the restaurant fell silent, save for the distant clatter of busboys. I sank onto a banquette, head in hands, the weight of it all crashing down. Who was I kidding? This secret life, hiding my name, my past, my everything, it was a house of cards and a hurricane. Nick deserved better than stolen moments and half-truths. And me? I deserved to stop running. My phone buzzed again. Nick. Stuck with them for drinks at the plaza. Rain check. Love you. Love you. 2 words that anchored me, even as the tide pulled. I typed back, always. Love you too. But as I locked up and stepped into the muggy night, the city's pulse thrumming around me, honking taxis, laughter spilling from bars, The endless neon promise of reinvention. I couldn't shake the feeling that the cards were about to tumble. The next few weeks blurred into a rhythm of evasion and ache. Nick and I carved out our stolen hours, lazy Sundays at the High Line, where we'd picnic on falafel wraps and watch joggers blur by, his head on my lap as I read him passages from my half-finished manuscript. It was a queer romance, thinly veiled autobiography, two men navigating the shadows of expectation, one a reluctant prince, the other a rebel with a cause. "This is us," he'd murmur, fingers lacing through mine. "But happier. Promise me we'll get there." I'd promise, because in those moments, I believed it. But the Hargrove's barbs lingered like a bruise, coloring everything. I catch myself scanning crowds for Harold's scowl or Evelyn's arched brow, half expecting them to materialize and shatter our fragile peace. Nick noticed. Of course, his intuition was a superpower, honed from years of reading boardroom bluffs. "What's eating you?" "Babe," he'd ask, over late-night Thai takeout in my shoebox apartment, the one with the leaky faucet and view of a brick wall. "You've been distant since that shift." "Just work," I'd lie, tracing the scar on his knuckle from a childhood fencing mishap. "You know how it is, assholes with deep pockets." He'd pull me close, breath warm against my neck. "Fuck him. You're the best thing in this city. Don't let them dim your light." If only he knew how brightly my light had once burned, or how I'd dimmed it on purpose. For him. For us. The merger Nick's family was chasing was the crown jewel, a $2 billion tie-up between Hargrove Capital and Ellis Developments, my father's firm. It was poetic, in a cruel way, the two empires that had orbited my life now colliding, with me as the invisible fulcrum. Dad had called once, voice crackling over the line from his Dubai layover. "Matthew, this deal's seismic. Your mother's planning the announcement gala. When are you coming home? We miss you. I miss you too," I'd thought, but said instead, "Busy, Dad. Life's good here." He'd sighed, the sound heavy with unspoken pleas. "Pride yourself on independence, son. But family, that's forever, forever." The word haunted me as autumn leaves turned Bryant Park into a watercolor riot. Nick threw himself into prep, endless meetings, spreadsheets that bled into our dates. "It's the last hurdle," he'd say, exhausted but electric. "After this, no more hiding. We'll tell them about us." All of it. I wanted to believe him. But doubt crept in like fog off the Hudson. What if all of it included my truth? The Ellis name, the inherent inside Forsaken, it could change everything. Would he still love the waiter who'd serve him greasy diner eggs at 2 a.m., or would he see the ghost of privilege I'd buried? The breaking point came on a crisp October Friday, the kind where the air bites just enough to remind you winter's stalking. I was off shift, killing time at a coffee shop near Union Square, scribbling notes for my novel on a napkin. The scene, a confrontation in a penthouse, truth spilling like champagne. Poetic justice, or foreshadowing. My phone rang, unknown number. I answered, expecting a telemarketer. "Matthew? It's Evelyn Hargrove." The world tilted. "How? Why?" My mind raced. Nick must have let something slip. Or worse. "Mrs. Hargrove," I managed, voice steady as rebar. "To what do I owe?" Cut the pleasantries. "Boy." Her tone was ice over steel. The socialite mask stripped bare. "I saw you with my son last weekend. That little stroll in the park. Holding hands like it was nothing. If you think you can sink your claws into Nicholas." Claws. The word ignited something feral. "Lady, I love your son." "That's not sinking, that's swimming." A pause, then a scoff. "Love." From a waiter? "Please. I've done my homework." No family, no fortune, just a sad little apartment and a job flipping burgers in a bow tie. You're using him, aren't you? To climb out of whatever gutter you crawled from. Her words eviscerated, each one a scalpel to the vulnerabilities I'd armored over. No family? I'd severed ties to protect them from scandal. For me, no fortune? I'd walked from millions to forge my own path. But to her, I was the villain in a Lifetime movie, the gold-digging queer preying on her golden boy. You're wrong, I said, low and lethal. About everything. But believe what you want. Nick's a grown man. Grown? He's confused. And when Harold and I are done, so will you be. The line went dead. I sat there, coffee cooling, fists clenched until my nails drew crescents in my palms. Confusion. The word echoed Dad's old lectures, the ones that sent me running. I couldn't do this anymore, Hyde. Shrink. Let their bigotry bully me into silence. That night, I waited for Nick at our spot, a hidden bench in Washington Square Park, under the shadow of the arch. He arrived rumpled, tie askew, carrying 2 hot chocolates spiked with peppermint schnapps. Sorry I'm late. Dad's on a tear about projections. I took the cup, but didn't sip. We need to talk. His face fell, that boyish vulnerability surfacing. What's wrong? Everything. The words tumbled out then, the hard rose at the restaurant. Their slurs. Evelyn's call. I held back the Ellis secret. Still, like a grenade pin. But the rest, how their hate had festered. How I couldn't keep pretending it didn't touch us. Nick's jaw tightened, anger flashing like lightning. God, Mom and Dad. They're dinosaurs. I'll handle it. Confront them tomorrow. No. I gripped his hand, the park's lamplight gilding us in amber. We do it together. No more half measures. He searched my eyes, then nodded, pulling me into a hug that smelled of wool and worry. Together. Always. But as we walked back to Brooklyn, arms linked against the chill, I felt the grenade's weight in my pocket. Tomorrow wasn't just a confrontation. It was detonation. The Hargrove penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a pre-war tower on Fifth Avenue. The kind of spread where chandeliers dripped like frozen waterfalls and the doorman called you sir, even if you were in sweats. I'd never been inside. Nick kept our worlds compartmentalized. Dates in a village or stolen weekends upstate. But as the elevator whispered us upward that Saturday morning, my stomach churned like I'd chugged bad espresso. You sure about this? Nick asked, squeezing my hand. He was in full armor, crisp button down, slacks pressed to razor edges, hair gel just so. I felt underdressed in my jeans and leather jacket, the tattoos peeking like confessions. Never sure. Lies. All of it. But love demanded bravery, and I'd run out of places to hide. The doors opened to a foyer that screamed old money, marble floors veined in gold. A Warhol screen print eyeing us from a wall. Voices drifted from the living room. Harold's boom, Evelyn's trill, the clink of brunch crystal. Nick took a breath and led me in. Mom? Dad? We need to talk. They were at the breakfast table, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Central Park like a private painting. Harold lowered his tablet, brow furrowing. Evelyn set down her mimosa, eyes sharpening on me like lasers. Nicholas. And the waiter. To what do we owe this unexpected visit? Nick pulled out a chair for me, chivalrous, defiant, then sat beside, our knees brushing under the table. It's about us. Matt and me. We're together. In love. And I won't hide it anymore. Silence crashed down, thicker than the fog over the reservoir below. Harold's face mottled red, veins bulging at his temples. Evelyn's hand fluttered to her throat, pearls clicking like rosary beads. Together, she echoed. Voice a brittle whisper. With him, darling. This is a phase. A rebellion. Remember that girl from Yale? The one with the... It's not a phase. Mom. Nick's tone was steel. The boardroom negotiator emerging. I've known since college. And Matt. He's the real deal. Kind. Brilliant. The man I want by my side. Forever. Harold slammed his palm on the table. Silverware jumping. Forever? With a goddamn waiter? Jesus. Nick. Look at him. Limp wrists. That artsy bullshit vibe. He's using you to get a foot in the door. Maybe snag a job at the firm once he bats his lashes. The air sucked out of the room. I felt it then. The old rage bubbling up. Hot and unfiltered. Using him, I leaned forward, voice steady despite the quake in my chest. You don't know a thing about me, Mr. Hardrove. But let's get one thing straight. I love your son for who he is, the man who volunteers at the shelter on weekends, who cries at indie films, who makes me believe in second chances. Not your money. Not your merger. Him. Evelyn's laugh was a shard of glass. Oh, please. Spare us the rom-com monologue. We know your type. Opportunists who flock to power like moths. Harold had his PI look into you after the restaurant. No family ties. No résumé worta dame. Just a sad story and a smile. The PI. Of course. Privacy was a luxury for them. Not us. Nick's head snapped to her. You investigated him? What the hell? Mom, for your own good, she snapped back, mascara-fringed eyes blazing. This city's full of predators. And you, waltzing in here like some hero from a bad novel. Enough, Harold roared, standing so fast his chair toppled. Nicholas, this ends now. Break it off, or the merger's dead. Ellis Developments? Poof. Gone. We'll bury them in lawsuits. Bad press. Your inheritance be damned. The threat hung there. A guillotine blade. Nick paled, but didn't flinch. You tank your own deal? Over this. Over you throwing your life away. Harold jabbed a finger at me. On some queer drifter who... Drifter? The word detonated something primal. I surged to my feet, heart pounding like a war drum. You want the truth? Fine. I'm Matthew Ellis. Robert Ellis's son. The one who's been missing from the family firm for 2 years because I refused to live a lie. Your precious merger? It's with my father. And me? I've been waiting tables to prove I don't need your world or anyone's pity. The room froze. Evelyn's glass slipped from her fingers, mimosa splashing like blood across the linen. Harold's mouth worked soundlessly, color draining to ash. Nick turned to me, eyes wide with shock and something deeper, betrayal, wonder. Matt. Ellis, why didn't you? Because I wanted you to love me. Not the name. Not the net worth. My voice cracked, raw as an open wound. I walked away from it all for this. For us. Evelyn recovered first. Voice a hiss. The Ellis boy, the one who disappeared after that scandal? Oh, God. Harold. He's the reason. Scandal. Nick echoed, whipping toward them. What scandal? Harold sank into his chair, deflated. Your proclivities, son. It leaked. Whispers in the trades. We thought it was contained, but if it's you in him. The pieces clicked, Dad's urgency on the phone. The merger's sudden urgency. My coming out hadn't just rocked my family. It had rippled into business. Investors spooked by instability. And now, here we were. The human cost laid bare over brunch. Nick's face crumpled, anger twisting into anguish. You used me as leverage? Against my own boyfriend, my future? We were protecting you. Evelyn wailed, tears carving tracks through her makeup. From ruin. from him. But the hymn had shifted. No longer the lowly waiter, but the prodigal son whose return could save or sink their empire. Irony, bitter as black coffee. I couldn't breathe. The room spun, chandeliers blurring into stars. This was a mistake, I muttered, grabbing my jacket. Nick, call me if you're ready. Matt, wait, he reached. But I was already at the door, the elevator's ding a mercy. As it descended, the city rose to meet me, vibrant, unforgiving. I'd bare my soul, and it had shattered everything. Fan no burn for the Hargroves' hypocrisy, but Doncam flickered too for their fear, brittle as their pearls. And for Nick, caught in the crossfire of loves he'd never asked to choose between. Outside, rain slicked the sidewalks, umbrellas blooming like black flowers. My phone stayed silent. I walked, blocks blurring, until I reached the Brooklyn Bridge, its cables humming in the wind. There, midway across, I stopped, gripping the rail as the East River churned below. The skyline glittered, a constellation of what-ifs. Had I just lost the man I loved, or freed us both? Hours later, soaked and shivering, a text lit my screen. Nick, meet me at the rooftop. Our spot. Please. The rooftop, my fire escape. Technically, but we claimed it as sanctuary. I raced home, heart a wild thing. He was there when I climbed up, drenched too, a bottle of cheap red between us. No words at first, just his arms pulling me close, our breaths mingling in the downpour. I'm sorry, he whispered finally, forehead to mine, for not seeing it sooner, for letting them, for everything. Not your fault. I cupped his face, thumbs brushing rain from his lashes. But we can't keep doing this halfway. He nodded, fierce. No more secrets. I told them, after you left. About us. About choosing you. The merger can burn. And your inheritance? He shrugged, that reckless grin breaking through. I'll build my own. With you. If you'll have me. The kiss that followed was salt and storm, a vow sealed in thunder. We stayed like that until the rain eased, the city exhaling below us. It wasn't fixed, not yet. Apologies to families loomed, mergers to mourn, wounds to heal. But in that moment, under a clearing sky, love felt like enough. The fallout unfolded like a slow-motion car crash, elegant and inevitable. By Monday, the tabloids were buzzing, page 6 dropping hints of Hargrove-Ellis merger drama, family feud, or fabulous romance. Nick's confrontation had cracked the dam. Leaks sprang from assistants. Rivals, the insatiable New York gossip mill. Dad called first, voice a mix of fury and relief. Matthew James Ellis. What the hell have you done? Walking into that viper's nest like some vigilante. I told the truth. Dad, I was in my apartment, nursing coffee strong as regret. The skyline mocking me through the window. About us. All of it. A pause. Then a sigh that carried the weight of boardrooms won and lost. Your mother's been beside herself. But proud, too. Damn proud. Come home. Son, let's fix this properly. Home. The word tugged. A half-healed scar. Mom's voice chimed in on speaker. Bring that boy. Matthew. The Hargrove one. We'll need allies in this mess. I laughed. Watery. He's not a boy. Mom. And yeah. Soon, Nick faced his own inferno. Harold cut him off. Cold turkey. Accounts frozen. The penthouse key yanked like a bad tooth. Learn some perspective was the old man's parting shot, delivered via courier. Evelyn sent flowers, white lilies. Funeral stark, with a note, forgive your foolish mother. Dinner soon. We weathered it in our bubble. My futon became our fort. Take out our feast. Nick crashed my shifts at Le Cirque, charming the staff with his easy wit, even bussing tables one night to thunderous applause. See, he'd say, wiping sweat from his brow, I can pour wine too, though mine comes with more charm. You're ridiculous, I'd tease, stealing a kiss in the alley. The thrill of openness electric. But openness bred opposition. Protests erupted, not the colorful pride kind, but ugly pickets outside Hargrove Capitol. Family values first, signs waving like pitchforks. Investors pulled out, citing moral hazards. Nick's inbox flooded with hate mail, slurs, Bible verses, threats veiled as concern. One night, he broke, curled on the floor, sobs racking him as I held him through it. Why does it have to hurt this much? He gasped. We're just us. Because love, in America, was still a battlefield. I thought, fought in courts and comment sections, where progress marched, but bigots dug in. It hurts because it's real, I murmured, rocking him. And real things scar. But they heal stronger. My novel surged then, pages pouring out like confession. I wove in the rooftop, the rain kiss, the penthouse showdown, even the Hargrove's cruelty, humanized through Evelyn's trembling hands. Nick read drafts over my shoulder, his pride a bomb. This is gold. Matt. Publish it. Scream it from the rooftops. The high came crashing on a December eve, snow dusting the streets like confectioner's sugar. Dad hosted the revised merger signing, not at some sterile conference room, but an intimate dinner at our Hamptons estate, fire crackling in the grand hearth. The guest list us, the Hargroves, truce flagged, Evelyn in cashmere that screamed apology, a handful of lawyers nursing scotch. Awkward didn't cover it. Harold and Dad circled like wary lions, small talk stiff as starch collars. Evelyn fussed over Nick, her touches tentative, while Mom cornered me by the dessert cart. He's handsome, Matthew, and kind-eyed. You did good. Yeah, I said, glancing at Nick across the room, laughing at something Dad said. I did. The signing went smooth, pens scratching. Handshakes exchanged, toasts to new chapters, but as plates cleared, Harold cleared his throat, glass raised. The room hushed. Nicholas. Matthew, his voice gravel rough. Eyes on us. We're wrong. About a lot. Pride makes fools of us all. Fear, too. But seeing you too, standing tall, it shames me. To my son and his partner, I'm sorry. And proud, Evelyn rose, tears glistening. We like you both for Christmas. If you'll come. Nick's hand found mine under the table. Squeeze fierce. We will. Later, on the drive back to the city, snow swirling like confetti, Nick turned to me, eyes shining. We did it. Against all odds. Not against, I corrected, lacing our fingers. With. Love's the odds beater. He leaned over, kissing my knuckles. Marry me? Not tomorrow, soon. City Hall. Elvis impersonator. The works. Yes, I breathed. The word a vow. 1,000 times. The wedding was small. Fierce, June. Under a sky bruised purple. On that same rooftop where rain had washed us clean. Vows exchanged with the city as witness. Honks our hallelujahs. Lights our lanterns. Nick in a suit sharp as his smile. Me in the one I'd worn to our first real date. Rings simple. Silver bands etched with Whitman's line. I am large, Nick read. Voice thick. I contain multitudes. You contain mine. Mom cried. Dad clapped Nick on the back like a son. The Hargroves came, Evelyn with a check for the shelter. Harold with a gruff, welcome to the madhouse. Even Louise from Loose Cirque, toasting with stolen champagne. It wasn't perfect. Scars lingered. Nick's trust in his folks tentative. My novel facing agent rejections that stung like salt. Bigotry didn't vanish. Headlines still sneered at lavish queer weddings, while straights tied knots in excess. But we built anyway. A life of shared bylines, my book deal landed. Dedicated to my multitude. Joint ventures. Nick startup for LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs. Funded by a begrudging Ellis grant. Lazy Sundays where we argued over brunch spots and made up in the sheets. 2 years on, as we watched the Pride Parade from our new balcony, rainbow flags snapping like freedom, I pulled Nick close, his back to my chest, heartbeat syncing with the drums below. "Worth it?" he asked, turning to nuzzle my neck. Every shattered bottle, every ugly word. I kissed his temple. "You?" he grinned. "That quartz-eyed mischief." "Babe, with you, I'd mock 1,000 rich assholes." We laughed, the sound blending with the cheers. A symphony of survival. In the end, love wasn't the fairy tale, it was the fight, the forgiveness, the fierce choice to show up, scars and all. And in America's messy heart, that was human enough for me.